On the program today, we start off from Nigeria, where Senate President Godswill Akpabio has called on Nigerians to exercise some patience in the face of crippling economic hardship in the country. Also, at some point, we will switch gears to the 37th African Union Ordinary Summit of the Heads of State and Governments, concluded with a strong commitment to address the continent's challenges, prioritizing key areas and also solidifying international diplomacy. Welcome to the conversation. I am Dakbo Adigboye. Let's talk. Let's start off in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria's Senate President Godswill Akpabio has called on Nigerians once again to exercise some patience in the face of the crippling economic hardship in the country. Now, speaking at a function in Abuja recently, the Senate President revealed that the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came in to meet the economy in severe distress. This is as the Nigeria Labour Congress said it has put machinery in place for a two-day nationwide protest slated for February 27th and 28th this year. The NLC National President, Joe Ajaero, said the protest would begin a week after the expiration of the 14-day ultimatum it issued to the federal government of Nigeria, which will expire on February 23rd. Now joining me, of course, to discuss this and make sense of this recent developments in Nigeria is Sheriff Adekoya, Public Affairs Analyst from Lagos, Nigeria. And also on the program is Nelson Ekujimi, is actually with me in the studio, Public Affairs Analyst also in Lagos. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Good evening to our viewers.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great. Now, let me start off with you, Nelson. What do you make of what Nigerians are currently going through, particularly when it comes to the economy and basic items or basic living, like feeding, for instance?
Well, thank you very much. I think we'll be deluding ourselves if we didn't know we'll be here today, because this was an economic situation predicted before now. And even though the whole world is going through economically challenging times, we are not immune. We also have our own local, economic realities. And part of our economic reality is that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had to remove fuel subsidy in order to stop the hemorrhaging of the economy. And what has this, developed into? That price of goods and services have, gone up the roof as a result of that, because the price of transportation, the price of production, a lot of businesses require petrol or diesel to power their engines. The movement of goods from point A to point B, the price of transportation has tripled. So the economic times we are in, some of us knew this is where we'll be. But be that as it may, the onus is now on the tiers of government at all levels, the federal, the state, and the local government, to put in place temporary mechanism to cushion the effect, while the long-term goal of the fuel subsidy removal, as well as the unified forex system, starts manifesting. And like we always say, that Rome was not built in a day. One does not expect that whatever measures the government put in place for a long-term solution will manifest immediately. We must recognize that those in government are not magicians. They are human beings. And they need the human factor also to bring whatever policies they have in mind to better the lot of the people, to play. So by and large, we expect that we'll be here, like the Senate President has rightly said, and even Mr. President, at every point of his engagement with the Nigerian people, has always come out clearly to tell the Nigerian people that, look, I can feel your pains, but this is what we have to do. The policies that Mr. President has put in place with regards to our economic revitalization, it's an avenue that we had no choice. You recognize that the previous administration, due to the paucity of revenue, had to go borrowing, and people were complaining seriously about the level of borrowing, and because we cannot continue in that trajectory, in order to save the economy, the government had to do what it had to do. And here we are. But, we are in this together, and I believe that collectively we overcome.
All right, I'll come back to you, Nelson. Let me, of course, go to Sheriff. Now, Sheriff, in Nelson's opening remark, he said that we are not surprised that, what Nigerians are going through right now, is something that we should not be surprised about. I don't believe I'm quoting out of context, Nelson. Absolutely. You said that it was sort of predicted, like people foretold, like people like yourselves, that Nigeria will go through this kind of hardship. Now, my question to you, Sheriff, do you actually concur with Nelson's assertion? And do you think that, if at all it was foretold, was it to this kind of, to this extent in terms of the economic hardship?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. Nelson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Okay, so in order not to turn this into an argumentative banter, I think it is realistic that we are critical about every of our utterances. No one wants to hear that side that it is foretold. But the truth be told, yes, quite a number of economic analysts, social analysts saw it coming, but no one saw it at this level. No one saw it come with this intensity. This intensity is beyond every prediction. Intensity has outweighed every narrative. Yes, I have not read or seen any news or story of greatness in any part of the world that doesn't come with its own imputable hardship or sacrifice. Maybe that's a more politically correct word to use, sacrifice. But yeah, sacrifice is expected, and that's exactly one of the most important fields for the greatness that we desire. But no one saw it coming to this level. No one. To put it straight and short, no one saw it coming. No one saw it at this level. We knew we need to tighten our belts. I remember in one of my conversations, especially on the day of the inauguration of this government, I said Nigerians should lower their expectations, basically because reality is different from projection. When you analyze and you project this, it is far from, estimate and reality. They are hardly on the same pedestal. There will always come a kind of gulf between them. So that gap is what we never knew would be this wide. Yes, that's the reality.
All right.
So, yes.
Okay, I wanted you to land, Sheriff, but but the follow-up I would have asked, which of course I would have gone to Nelson, is you talked about the fact that the president, quite a couple of times has said that he feels the pain Nigerians are going through, and that what is happening within Nigeria isn't just peculiar to Nigeria alone, it's happening across many countries of the world. And but right now, this statement, I feel your pain, particularly by the president, seems to become, or it's looking like a rhetoric, because Nigerians are beginning to ask critical questions as to if at all he feels that pain, because it doesn't look like there's relief, anytime soon.
Well, the role of a leader is to empathize and carry his people along, to make them have a sense of belonging, to make them feel that whatever they are passing through, the leader understands it. Yes.
So are you saying that he's just saying that to pacify Nigerians?
No, he's not saying that to pacify. The economic decisions that the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has taken were decisions that were inevitable. We had no other choice. But, when you take economic decisions that affect the lives of your people, these decisions will come with some, inconveniences. If the inconveniences is now going beyond your expectation, it is within your purview as a leader to look at what are the short-term ameliorating measures that you put in place. And, if you ask me, you recollect that when this government came on board and started this economic policy, part of the ameliorative gestures or policies statements was the wage award to workers. We saw it even in states. Part of the measures that has been put in place is that even local governments are putting in place palliatives. Then some of the measures to cushion the effect is that...
How effective, I'm sorry to cut in here, how effective is this palliative system? Because, I mean, I have quite a circle of friends, well-wishers, family, and none of them seems to have gotten anything from the government. I mean, I would really want to know. Maybe, I mean, there's a video that will come up right now. I mean, this, I think, was even organized by a private NGO. I'm not sure it's from the government, right? But talking about the palliative system, particularly from the government, I don't know. How effective will you say this is, in solving the issue at hand?
Well, I think the media is in a better position to help us, judge how effective the palliatives are. Because the citizens cannot be everywhere. When incidents happen or when events...
But do you know anybody that has gotten anything from the government?
Quite a number. I know over 100 people.
Sorry, Sheriff. Nelson. Let me ask Sheriff. Sheriff, do you know anyone that has gotten anything from the government in terms of palliative?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yes.
You're
yes,
laughing?
I do. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I had to laugh.
Okay.
The truth is, you see, I had a conversation over the weekend, and I said everything that happened in this country, everything, we tend to always push everything back to the president. Yes, he's the arrowhead, he's the commander-in-chief, he's the poster boy of the government, he's the #1 citizen. So he definitely needs to be responsible for what happens across his tentacles. So he's more or less like the octopus right now. So yes, the palliative, the question you asked, I have seen. In fact, I was close to the center of distribution of one of those palliatives.
Okay, how was it distributed? Was it random individuals that were given, or was it party affiliated?
No.
I would sorry for the details, but
coming there.
Okay,
I am coming there.
Okay,
I am coming there. The one I saw, I experienced one in of course, the two that I experienced that both in Lagos. So I do not speak for things that I do not see. So one in the Lagos mainland, then two others in Shomolu local government and Shomolu federal constituencies. Yes, he went a bit far, but not enough. Truth be told. And we read the newspapers, we listen to radio, we see reports on social media. How many of these reports have we seen? How many? So this is now an opportunity for us to start calling out some bad eggs in the government. It is not always about government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. I saw a video. I think the video was around November, December. One House of Reps member from Edo, maybe at Sako. I do not have all of these details in with the best of precision right now. He mentioned that federal government gave to them trucks of food items. He showed in his video. I saw it online. I was never in Edo. 2 trucks of rice. And this guy was distributing this to the members of his constituency. How many other members of the National Assembly do we have record of such for? How many local governments, how many state governments do we see this for? So you see, the fact that the palliative has been approved authoritatively graciously by the president is laudable. But are other members of this entire government doing the needful? That's the question we should ask. I saw it in Shomolu local government, and I think the video is on. I saw it in Lagos mainland. I saw it Shomolu federal constituency, Bariga. Those are the neighborhoods where I was opportune to see. And I saw the one from Etsako.
Okay, Sheriff, I mean, you've answered that, but let's, of course, move a bit. Let's look at what the Senate president said at a recent hearing. I mean, I wish that, of course, a graphic could come up. where speaking at a function recently in Abuja, Akpabio actually revealed that the current administration came to meet the economy in severe distress. And he blamed a bulk of that to the previous administration. In his words, the kind of debts, the economy and the economic mess that we are in, a lot of people do not understand. Now, President Obama said that you cannot know Washington until you get to Washington. So by the time we went in to look at the economic situation of the country, it was terrible. There's another quote, and it goes on to say, so you know the former governor of the central bank, we don't even know what to charge him with, which of course sparked reaction. The hunger in the land is because of the kind of policies and actions that they took. Now, some have termed this another tactical blame game, which, for want of words, seem to be synonymous with the president. We know that during campaigns, if we cast our mind back, he blamed the woes of Nigeria back then to the People's Democratic Party, saying that for 16 years, they pushed Nigeria, to where it is right now. And right now, they are saying, you know what, even though we are the same party, it was a different administration. I want to go to you, Nelson. I mean, what do we make of this?
Well,
does this look like an administration that knows what to do with what is on ground?
Absolutely. It's an administration that is very much in tune with reality of its responsibility to the people. And the major area of its responsibility to the people is to communicate what is happening in government. You see, when we come here and people who told us not to look back yesterday now are pointing fingers backwards. When President Goodluck Jonathan was in office, we were producing 2.3 million barrels of crude oil per day. We sold crude oil for $120. At a point in time, it went as far as $140 per barrel. President Goodluck Jonathan, can anybody point to even a kilometer of road that federal administration constructed? Hold on, just a minute.
Okay.
President Muhammadu Buhari constructed the second Niger bridge. A lot of infrastructure renewal. When President Muhammadu Buhari came into office, we are aware that the production of crude oil, due to the criminal activities by economic saboteurs called Niger Delta Avengers and what have you, the production of crude oil plummeted to as low as 500,000 barrels per day. And the price, go and check the records, the price also fell from that Olympian height to as low as $28 per barrel. So tell me, where do you, and this was an administration that also faced the COVID-19 crisis, where the economy of the whole world was shut down for almost 2 years.
But
tell me where you
hold on, the same Goodluck Jonathan administration that you're making reference to, the price of a bag of rice then compared to what we have now, the price of a bag of cement then compared to what we have now, the price of a bag of ordinary noodles then compared to what we have now. How does that make economic sense?
It will not, if you don't retrospect backwards how the economy was, where we were selling crude oil, where the government was using the revenue from crude oil to subsidize everything. And right now, we have an administration on board which is echoing to the call by economic experts that, look, subsidizing everything under the sun is not the way to run a free market economy. And the government has said, okay, I'm taking away my subsidy. Let those products find their real value. So if you were buying a bag of rice for 12,000 and the government was using the dollar from sale of petroleum products to cushion it, the present administration does not have the luxury because there's no revenue. But now that it has removed the subsidy, there's more revenue to federal government, states and local government. That is the difference. So if you are measuring it from under former administration, we had a dual exchange rate, and that dual exchange system was one in which even the former central bank governor has been implicated. And when people come out and say President Buhari, I ask them, under the Constitution of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari is mandated by law to work with Nigerians whom he has appointed from the states making up the Federal Republic of. President Muhammadu Buhari could not have ruled Nigeria with his wife and children. So if President Muhammadu Buhari has appointed you or you were elected and you swore on oath to abide by the Constitution, if you go against the oath, that is not the fault of President Muhammadu. That is your problem. You face the music in law. But I know that the CBN governor today, former CBN governor, is in court. President Muhammadu Buhari is not in court because he has not been found to have conspired with him in doing what he did. So the present administration is living according to the realities of this time that, look, there's no space for borrowing. We have to generate our revenue from the little resources we can gather. And that is exactly what they are doing. So the economic dislocation is a reality. Nobody must come anywhere or go anywhere and say, oh, no, Nigerians are enjoying. Absolutely not. We are all passing through it, no matter your status.
I would like to go to Sheriff. Sheriff, I mean, you feel free to react to, of course, some of the things you've said. And what do you make of course, what the Senate President did say, going back again to say, you know what, we inherited a distressed economy. We are trying to, of course, put things in the right perspective. Don't blame us entirely for, you know, for what is happening at the moment, even though it's the same political party.
Well, thank you, and thank you so very much, Nelson. You see, sometimes there are things that are suiting to the air or to hear, even though they probably may not be the truth. You always find a line, a very thin line between the reality and the truth, fact sometimes. The reality is, I probably definitely would not support any blame sharing episode, but reality is the fact that the last administration didn't do a lot of things right. There's no way a government that is 9 months old would have the luxury of correcting all of the 8 years of woes. But it does not mean that 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari was completely written in woof, or he went down woefully. No. But yes, he recorded quite some sizable economic gains, social gain, infrastructural gain. A lot of things were achieved during President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, especially particularly around works, you know, roads, bridges, and all of those. This will stimulate economic growth. But at the same time, he had a very terrible share of corruption, truth be told. And I think that's exactly what Nelson was trying to say when he said, you were appointed or elected to work with the president, you swore to an oath. So if you are found wanting, you face the music. I agree. Now, coming back to this administration, we saw all of the things that we see under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, the issue of the Accountant General, former AGF, Jonah Otunla, 24 billion here, another person, 109 billion. All of these are not small money. They are huge. And at the same time, like I've always told people who care to listen, our biggest challenge in Nigeria has always been leadership. But when we say leadership, it is not the arrowhead leadership, not always about the president alone. It goes way down to the lowest of the ranking officers, the councillor. So how much ownership do we have with our people? How much believability do they bring to the government? All of these things, I think we need to ask ourselves. Now, coming back to this administration, yes, apart from leadership, the number 2 concern on the table for me as regards Nigerian polity is nothing but policy somersault. Yes, if you see one policy in the morning, in the afternoon, another one comes in. Yes, I understand that we all need to find a way to improve on what we have, not necessarily meaning we intend to sabotage what's already working. We saw a lot of things under the last administration, particularly around our monetary policies, under the leadership of former CBN Governor Emefiele. We saw what happened. A lot of things are still being discussed. Some cases are in the court. A lot of us are still awaiting DG Mobazi's all these reports. So there's a lot of rods. So you can't have all of these things yesterday and you expect a very juicy today. It's not possible. Truth be told. But that truth will not resonate with the average person on the road.
Can I just ask you directly, is that truth resonating with you?
Well, I am an average Nigerian, so you should understand.
No, is the simple question is yes or no? Is the truth resonating with you?
Well, it is relative, like I said.
No, I mean for you, it's okay.
No. Listen, wait, it's not a yes or no answer. It is not white or black answer. Basically, because I am informed, give me some level of solace, some level. Because I am informed, gives me some level of solace and respite. Take away those who do not understand all of these things. The only thing they understand is that rice is now 70,000. So how do we arrest all of these becomes our concern. Only very few people understand that it is not this government who took the price up. But yes, this government is responsible for whatever happened under the government's administration. What we then need to
you said it is not this government that took the price up. Sorry, I mean, but I would just like to dig in on this, particularly when it comes to some of the policies this current government, introduced at the start of the administration. That's on the 29th of April, early this year. Now, the first move was to remove the subsidy regime and, of course, unification of currency. And right now we are seeing the ripple effect, and it looks like Nigerians are beginning to question the validity of some of these policies. I want your reaction to these policies, if at all they are still tenable, side by side with some of the recommendations by the IMF and also the World Bank, which, of course, didn't sit well with quite a number of Nigerians.
Well, there's always a sinister suspicion when it comes to IMF, World Bank, and all of these international bodies. When it comes to policy about them, the policy as regards developing nations or economics like Nigeria, an average Nigerian or most Nigerians do not usually trust them because we've seen what happens in the past. We saw the technical warfare between African Development Bank and quite a number of other leading economies in the world. They will probably want to keep you impoverished so that you remain the farm ground or the resource ground for their own part of the world. That's a conversation on its own that is big enough to form the biggest part of narrative, depending on how you want to look into it. But now, bringing this back home to the policies, like I said, number one concern that we always had in Nigeria has been leadership. Number two is policy somersault. Whenever we try to rejiggle our policy, there are always windows through which economic saboteurs would always take advantage of. And don't forget, patriotism has gone very low in Nigeria. So poor people would do anything to survive. So you do not see unpatriotism from them as a first layer. You see survival. So when you peel away survival, then you now talk about maybe they are not patriotic. The wealthy ones, you really can't talk about survival. They have all it takes. They can afford anything. So whatever they do is plainly unpatriotic if that thing is not contributing to the growth of the nation. So anytime there's a policy twist, there are quite a number of Nigerians who look for windows to exploit it.
I think we just lost connection there with Sheriff, but I will come to you, Nelson. Your reaction to some of the policy initiatives that the current administration has set in motion to help stabilize the economy. Do you think they are, of course, steps in the right direction, and what are they leaving, particularly out when it comes to their estimates? Now, given the fact that we know that according to the NBS, our inflation rate from January, which was about 29.8%, 28.8% or so, is now about 29.9%, as at February.
Well, you know very well that the NBS statistics is based on so many variables. The economic policies of this government is one in which we had no other option. I still restate that. There was no choice, and I think we must get it very clear. As much as we look at IMF and World Bank prescriptions, with caution, we must also not run away from the fact that we were in tune with the fact that this is an economic policy that we needed. We didn't need an IMF to tell us that subsidy was killing the economy, whereby in 2022, the Minister for Finance told the Nigerian people that for 8 months, We were selling crude oil, we didn't get 1 cent of revenue from crude oil. Why? The whole profit was being used to subsidize for 8 solid months. That's almost a year of, a country's budget. So the economic policies in place, as we go along with it, I'm very sure that the benefits will start to resonate. And how will the benefits start? When the subsidy has been removed. Once we start local production of petroleum products, for example, once we change to cleaner and safer energy to power our homes, to power industries, to transport, then the price of goods, as we speak today, you recognize some persons are using gas to power their generator. I've had an experience whereby I went and interrogated somebody who was using it for a business, and he told me that it's cheaper compared to petrol or diesel. So the measures we are taking, that is taking place now, is that we are transiting from our old ways to a new ways, and it will definitely come with pains. We all feel these pains. There's no doubt about it. The forex regime, the unified forex regime, a lot of us have come out publicly and said this is like robbing Peter to pay Paul, where some persons will get forex at the official rate and they'll go and sell at the black. But now, go and search for your forex. So it reduces the opportunity for corruption. So these policies, this economic, re-engineering of the Nigerian economy.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Nelson. Sorry, but we're pressed for time. I just would like to take, in 30 seconds, your opinion on this, Sheriff. Do you see any light at the end of this dark tunnel, and how soon?
Well, that's very political. You already gave adjective to the tunnel. Is that the tunnel is dark? Okay, well, the truth is, it probably may appear relatively dark, but definitely there is light at the end of the tunnel. But all hands must be on deck for us to achieve that. And our policies must not be seen as being fatal. So we must find a way to rejig our policies every day. Subsidy removal, how do we arrest the fallout of this? The monetary policies, how do we arrest the fallout? The black market is crippled. Does it mean the crippling of the black market then give loose to the Naira-dollar relationship at its is 1700? So there is light at the end of the tunnel, but a lot must be done, and a lot of patriotic gesture is expected from every one of us. Is that truly? But there's light.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much once again for your time. Sheriff Adekoya, a public affairs analyst from Lagos, Nigeria, and also Nelson Ekujimi, of course, a public affairs analyst also from Lagos. Gentlemen, once again, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Nelson, thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we'll go on a quick break. When we return, we will, of course, be looking at matters arising at the just concluded 37th African Union Summit. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. This is still the conversation. Now, leaders of the African Union member countries, representatives of international organizations, and numerous other invited guests attended the 37th African Union Summit, which was held at the organization's headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, for the past 2 days. Now, leaders have discussed a range of continental issues, such as peace and security, AU's reform initiatives, quality and accessible education, and also the implementation of Agenda 2063's first phase, a 10-year plan. And of course, joining me on the program to discuss this and make sense of it is Ovigwe Egwegu, policy analyst at Development Reemergent, joining from Abuja, Nigeria, and also Michael Larry Toluhi, African Affairs Analyst, joining from the United Kingdom. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Now, let me start off with you. Of course, Ovigwe, I mean, a lot of issues were x-rayed during the summit. Part of it includes, like I mentioned, peace and security, AU's reform initiatives, quality and accessibility of education, implementation agenda, for, of course, 2063, amongst others. Do you think that the issues discussed at the just concluded summit was exhaustive?
Yeah, I mean, to summarize, if you look at what was discussed and all of the reports and sessions, I would say the AU in 2024 focused more on bureaucratic issues rather than the contentious, political and security issues across the continent. Because, for instance, while the issue of peace and security was discussed, the bulk of that was really about operationalizing the African Union Peace Fund, right? But what about the issue in Sudan? That issue, the conflict in Sudan, for instance, has displaced over 7 million people, the highest number of displaced people anywhere in the world right now. There are other issues around on security, like in the DRC, where there's tension between Rwanda and the DRC, of course. We have issues in the Sahel. Even in Ethiopia, recently we saw the MOU between Ethiopia and Somaliland. So there are many contentious issues that I think were just glossed over rather than giving those issues center stage. And I think those are actually very consequential, despite the fact that other structural reforms are still important. Multilateral cooperation was also discussed. All those issues are important, but I think in terms of prioritization, that's where they missed it.
I would like to also know your reaction to this, too, in terms of the issues discussed. Do you think that the leaders of countries and, of course, guests present at the AU 37th Summit were exhaustive when it comes to, or when it came to deliberation of issues, particularly that affect the African continent? In reality. I'm talking to you, of course, Michael.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. We just saw the African leaders gather again, and even when they called the meeting, they told us we're going to talk about. They made everybody believe that the meeting is being called for them to look at the security, the conflicts, the coup, and the insecurity issues in Africa, knowing that even the host country in Ethiopia is facing the jihadis and all that. But they didn't do that, and they just went again to another set of jabbering, and that has been the bane of African issue, where our leaders just come up and they just want to do these trips, and they come here and they just bag up a lot of bureaucracy, just like Ovigwe has said. They've refused to face the cross of the matter. They've refused to attend to issues where they needed to attend to. They've refused to stand as a body, AU as a body, taking stands where they need to take stands and letting everybody in Africa know that truly Africa is a bloc and AU should be a power bloc, not to be toyed with. But even countries that belong to the AU don't see AU as a threat, because don't see AU as a body to be respected. And why? Because our leaders in their various countries, they've decided not to play the rules of leadership, and as a body, as a unit, and as an organization, they've not done that. They just get to do these meetings as a form of a get-together, not as a decision-making organ, or as an organ that is really serious in checking about the welfare and the well-being of the African nations and the Africans itself.
All right. I would like to subsume this conversation to two particular areas. The area that has to do with, or three particular areas. Number one, security. Number two, local governance. By local governance, I mean in terms of the governance level, in terms of performance at country levels, per country, and also the economy. Let me start off with the economy. Right now, a lot of African countries are battling the value of their currency. I mean, we are beginning to see cases, for instance, in Nigeria, where the naira, the value of the naira to the dollar keeps, plummeting. Every other day, every other week, we know what the value, it keeps dropping. And this is not just peculiar to Nigeria. Quite a number of African nations have similar challenge. And we're also seeing a situation whereby there are power grabs happening across certain, areas within the continent. Do you think that this summit, looked into these particular areas to find some sort of collective solution to address it? I would like your opinion on this first, Ovigwe.
Well, the situation on the African continent is such that even when we're looking at institutions like the African Union, I mean, that's why we're having structural reforms, because we still don't know what exactly the AU needs to be doing more of at this point. I mean, of course, there are recommendations, right? And that's what part of what they are what was under consideration in terms of reforms. But overall, the AU being more of an intergovernmental organization rather than supranational organization cannot really impose to a large extent what it thinks. Rather, it's supposed to form consensus. And on issues like the economic challenge you just mentioned, I still think that's something that will be that's still at the national level. You mentioned Nigeria, for instance. Nigeria and many African countries, Tanzania, Kenya, and the like, they are all faced with dollar scarcity, but they are not being very proactive in how they are.
Sorry to cut in. For instance, some are saying that African countries, for instance, trade in dollar. That why not? Why some have recommended that maybe Africa should have its own. I know that conversation came up at some point, but it seems to have withered away. No one is talking about it in a way to just boost the local economy. I mean, I would like you to look at this also in that light.
Yes, of course. There is a Pan-African payment system that's been developed, but the Pan-African payment system is not necessarily a currency. Right? It's more of a tool to facilitate cross-border payment. But what currency are you going to be paying in? And that's the point I was just trying to make. So if you give you an example, Nigeria got about 38% of its imports from China in 2023, which was roughly about 40 billion dollars. That's a lot of money, right? Now, did we need to use USD for all of those imports? No, because in 2018 we had an agreement between the People's Bank of China and the CBN on a $2.5 billion currency swap, where we can then, of course, use yuan, which is Chinese currency, to make those payments, thereby lessening our demand for US dollar. Other countries are moving in this direction. They are opening swap lines. Iraq has a swap line. The UAE has a swap line of about 4.9 billion. The Saudis have a swap line of about 6 billion. We need to. Nigeria did renew its swap agreement in 2021, but it needs to expand it so that you don't need a third currency to make imports trade between Nigeria and China when you can do that with Chinese currency and free up more of those liquidity for us to be able to import other commodities from elsewhere. So I think instruments like that need to be considered. Maybe that's not an AU issue, but African countries themselves, they can sit with China to iron those issues out.
All right, I would like to know, of course, your opinion on this, Michael. Do you think concerning issues of governance and security and also the economy, particularly with areas to the very recent power grabs you're seeing in some parts of Africa, and also the fact that many African economies are struggling, was that really, touched on and agreements reached exhaustively?
Thank you. Just like Ovigwe has said, the African nation, African Union, as it is known, haven't done that. But these actually needs to break down or being done at the country level. But this is hard for the African nations to have done because, like we said, our leaders have not really been doing what they need to do. And for me, I won't go into currency swap or no currency swap, because even when you're swapping your currency or whatever thing you're doing, you're still going to be needing a second or a third party currency to do your transaction. What happens to the wealth and the endowments in Africa? How well have we managed what we have? People don't understand this. Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of human resources, natural resources, and whatever resources you want to call about it. So what have we done in developing our resources, in making use of our resources, and doing more of exportation and less of importation, and making ourselves have a value Because what are we trading with? Because we need to understand what we are trading with, because we need to give a lot of value. We have a lot of things you see in Congo where a lot of natural resources needed to do microchips is basically domiciled in Congo,
All right.
and the guys mining it can't even feed, while some people are feeding it, some countries, some Western countries are making a lot of money from it, while those actually have it don't do. We see what we have in Nigeria. Let's come to our home where we both belong to Nigeria. We see a lot of resources we have, untapped resources.
All right, Michael, I'm sorry, I might just need to, of course, interrupt you slightly, but in 30 seconds, I would just like you to conclude because you're pressed for time.
All right. So what I'm just saying is Africa needs to do more of inward look. We need to look at inward and be proactive and be productive and be innovative in ours. And because once Africa is able to look inward and be productive, all this will be taken care of.
All right, gentlemen, deeply appreciate your time on the program. Ovigwe Egwegu, Policy Analyst, Development Reemergent from Abuja, Nigeria, and also Michael Lanre Toluhi, African Affairs Analyst from the United Kingdom. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and it's a wrap on today's episode of the program. Now, just, of course, to conclude the show today, leadership across the world from time to time has always been about results. It's not about excuses. You have chosen to lead a set of people means that you have taken it, as your responsibility to shape their destiny, because their destiny lies in your hands. I think if every leader has a sense of responsibility towards its people, it will find every means necessary to ensure that they are not just secure, but they are happy. This is my message to African leaders. My name is Dakpo Adigboyi. Bye for now.